All right, so today we're jumping into the story of a young man caught between two powerful opposing worlds. On one side, you have the strict colonial education of British India, and on the other, the deep spiritual traditions of his family. It's a story that builds to one single life-defining choice. So let's start with this. This is a pretty wild choice, right? I mean, think about it. You've spent 4 years grinding it out at a top college. You've passed all your final exams. And then on the day you're supposed to get your degree, you just don't show up? Why? What could possibly lead to that decision? Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we're gonna look at all the pieces of the puzzle that shaped this young man, Abhay Charan. We'll see him as both a scholar and a devotee. We'll check out what life was really like inside his British college, and we'll explore this, this inner spiritual call he was feeling. Then there's the whole marriage situation and his dad's advice. And finally, how Gandhi's movement just changed everything, leading him to choose a totally different path. All right, part 1, a scholar and a devotee. So let's meet Abhay. You've got to understand the dilemma his father was in. He absolutely wanted his son to get a good, modern British education. But at the same time, he was terrified that those Western influences would totally wipe out the deep spiritual values he taught him his whole life. So the solution, the compromise, was Scottish Churches College in Calcutta. It was a big deal, a really prestigious British-run school. For his dad, Gurmohan, this felt like the perfect middle ground. A way for Abhay to get ready for a career, but hopefully not lose sight of the devotional principles he grew up with. It was all about trying to walk that fine line between the material world and the spiritual one. Okay, part 2, inside the British college. So did this grand balancing act actually work? Well, once Abhay got inside the college walls, he found out pretty quickly that it was complicated. It was a place that was basically pulling him in two opposite directions at once. I mean, look at this. On one side, you had this incredible world of learning. Abhay genuinely liked his Scottish professors. He thought they were good, moral, kind-hearted guys. But then on the other side, you had this constant, in-your-face reminder of colonialism. Just imagine trying to learn while you're handed a textbook that basically says your culture is primitive, or having a professor literally shout at you that Indians will never be independent. What a thing to live with every day. It was a total tightrope walk. And the crazy thing is, Abhay was actually great at navigating it. He was in the English Society and the Sanskrit Society. He played soccer, he could stand up and recite English poetry 1 minute and then turn around and deliver these beautiful Sanskrit verses from the Bhagavad Gita the next. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. He even starred in a play about a famous saint, Lord Chaitanya, and his performance was so powerful it actually moved people to tears. All right, part 3, a call from within. So on the surface, everything looked great, right? Star student, involved in campus life, but underneath all of that, something else was going on. His inner world was starting to scream for attention, and this is where things get really interesting. Yeah, the college life was just all-consuming. Lectures on Western logic, tons of homework, hours and hours in the library. It was a completely different universe from the life of devotion he was used to. His whole routine, which used to revolve around his family's temple, was now just class after class. He even had to take the personal deity he'd worshipped his whole life and literally pack it away in a box. It was like he was putting a huge part of himself away too. And his friends noticed. This quote from his buddy Rupin is so telling, isn't it? He says Abhay was always thinking about something religious or philosophical. So even though he was drowning in Western thoughts and all that academic pressure, his mind was constantly drifting back to his spiritual path. On the outside, he's just another college kid. But on the inside, his heart was in a totally different place. And then came this dream. It's so powerful. He dreams that his deity is actually complaining to him about being stuck in that box. That's how deep this connection was for him. It wasn't just a habit he could drop for a few years. It was a living relationship. And that dream was the final push he needed. He went, he got the deity out of the box, and he started his daily worship again, somehow squeezing it in between all his classes and studying. Okay, section 4, marriage and a father's advice. And as if trying to juggle college and his spiritual life wasn't enough, life decided to throw another major curveball at him, an arranged marriage. But what's amazing is the advice he gets along with it. So this was pretty standard for the time. His dad arranged his marriage to a young girl just 11 years old, named Radha Rani Dada. Now, Abhay was still a student, so he wasn't expected to provide for her right away or anything, but poof, just like that, he was a married man. Now, Abhay was not thrilled.
at all. But then his father steps in with this wow. Listen to this advice. He basically says, hey, the fact that you don't like your wife, that's actually a good thing. It's a blessing. It'll keep you from getting too attached to worldly stuff and help you focus on your spiritual life. I mean, what an incredible way to look at it. Instead of a problem, his dad turns it into a spiritual advantage. And that idea really stuck with Abe.
All right, on to part 5, Gandhi's spiritual revolution. So while all this personal drama is going on with school and marriage, there's this massive political shift happening all over India. And for someone like Abe, it offered a way to finally make sense of these two worlds he was stuck between. You had students all over, secretly meeting up, talking about independence, Swaraj. But here's the key thing. This wasn't just politics for them. It was deeply spiritual. Think about it. All that Vedic culture that the British textbooks were calling primitive, the independence movement was holding it up as the very heart and soul of India. So for them, freeing India wasn't just about kicking the British out. It was about bringing back India's spiritual greatness. And at the center of all this was Gandhi. And you can totally see why Abe would be drawn to him. This was a guy who didn't just talk the talk. His politics and his spiritual principles were one and the same. He carried the Bhagavad Gita everywhere. He lived this super simple, pure life. But, and this is the big one, he wasn't hiding away in a temple. He was out in the world, taking these ancient spiritual truths and trying to make them work, right now, to free millions of people. And that brings us to our final section, choosing a different path. This is it. This is the moment where everything, the British education, his inner devotion, his arranged marriage, this new wave of nationalism, it all comes crashing together and forces him to make a choice. So picture this, it's 1920. The air is just electric with tension. The British have passed these really harsh laws, there was a horrific massacre of innocent people, and in response, Gandhi calls for a massive non-cooperation movement. Boycott everything British, schools, courts, everything. And right in the middle of all this chaos, Abhay Charan finishes his final exams. And this is when he makes his move. He refuses to go get his diploma. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just some kid getting swept up in a protest. This was the answer to everything he'd been wrestling with for years. In this one single act, he finally figured out who he was and what he was going to stand for. Yeah, by saying no to that piece of paper, he was saying no to the whole life path that the colonial system had planned for him. It was a conscious choice. He was picking his own path, one that lined up with his deeper spiritual values and his identity as an Indian, not as a subject of the British Empire. So he still had to get a job, right? His dad helped him get one. But everything else was different. He started wearing khadi, that simple hand-spun cloth that was basically the uniform for Gandhi's followers. It was a symbol, a public declaration to anyone who saw him that said, I'm with them, I'm with the revolution. And it just makes you think, doesn't it? How do all those conflicting pressures we face when we're young, from school, from family, from the world around us, how do they end up forging who we become? Abhay Charan's story is just such a powerful example of how that collision between what the world wants from you and what you feel inside can lead you to make one big choice. A choice that rejects the expected path and sets you on a course that nobody, least of all you, could have ever seen coming.